Week 4 is on the horizon, and this week might be a very, very important week of trade targets for you guys because if you're 3-0, if you're 2-1, this is the time where you look ahead, you try and build your roster to compete for a championship. If you're 0-3 or 1-2, you might be in a little bit more dire straits, but hopefully, if you guys are watching this channel, you're in a good position.
Yeah, ultimately here, if you start out strong, it's about positioning yourself in a way that you are the championship favorite come the big week. So, for example, if a guy in your league is 0-3 and he drafted CeeDee Lamb, and you can get CeeDee Lamb right now for like a Tedrow McMillan plus a bench piece, like do your due diligence. If you're 3-0, you have the opportunity to take risks because ultimately, as we know, if CeeDee Lamb comes back healthy, potentially acquired a 21 or 22 plus point per game player.
Yeah, and you have the affordability to take risks on guys that we talked about last week. Chase Brown, guy who drafted Chase Brown, probably not in great shape right now. The guy who drafted Ashton Genty, Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey, probably not in great shape right now. So those guys are definitely still really good buys for us. But let's start it off with the first trade target of today's video. And I'm going, champagne tastes on a beer budget here with this first guy, and that's Ja'Marr Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals. There are tons of overperforming wide receivers and running backs in fantasy football. Just literally look at the top 12 to 15 wide receivers and running backs. It's not the guys that we thought it was going to be. It's been a very weird start to the season. I think there's going to be plenty of 2-for-1 packages available for elite guys like Ja'Marr Chase. So literally every buy that I have in today's video was drafted in the top 8 picks of fantasy football drafts. The Chase manager's worst fear just came true because that's the other part of why I think Chase is a decent buy is that there's a psychological factor involved. The offense was in shambles. They just got absolutely destroyed by the Minnesota Vikings. Browning, in his starts in 2023, threw a touchdown in every game, threw for 300 plus yards in half of his games. He averaged 8.0 yards per attempt and a 70.4% completion. I think there will be much better days ahead for this Bengals offense. So generally the whole Bengals offense is a buy for me right now, but specifically the best guy in the Bengals offense, Ja'Marr Chase, is the one that I'm going after because even despite that monster game in week 2, in week 1 and week 3, he was really boomer bust. People in fantasy, especially in home leagues, don't like when people are boomer bust, especially when you took them first overall. Over that span that Ja'Marr Chase played with Jake Browning in 2023 and the first couple games this year that Jake Browning's been a significant starter, he's still averaging well over 15 points per game. A lot of that production in 2023 too came when Chase wasn't having his best season. T. Higgins was out of the lineup. Browning has more experience now. There's no reason to me that Chase can't still be a 16, 17, 18, 19, maybe even 20 point per game receiver. And who knows, maybe Joe Burrow's back in time for the fantasy playoffs. I just think that if you're 3-0, if you're 2-1, going after the Ja'Marr Chase manager who might be down bad right now and sending Emeka Egbuka for him because Emeka Egbuka is producing, Emeka Egbuka plus a QJ, Emeka Egbuka plus a J.K. Dobbins, something like that. Bucky Irving and Jalen Waddle was sent for Ja'Marr Chase in one league. Josh Jacobs and Garrett Wilson for Etienne and Ja'Marr Chase. Like these types of trades, using guys like Egbuka, using guys like Zay Flowers, Keenan Allen, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, George Pickens, guys who have nice value right now. That's how I'm using them to tier up.
Yeah, and on the inverse too, if you're going to the guy who has Ja'Marr Chase, again, maybe he isn't 3-0, but let's just say you have CeeDee Lamb on your team. We see this deal at the top. I think this would make sense. If you're in a 1-2 type of hole, you're getting a similar tier wide receiver. Lamb, of course, not going to be playing in the intermediate. DeAndre Swift, maybe you can allure that manager to be able to accept this deal given the touches he's currently receiving. I think this would make sense if you are in a hole, paying that DeAndre Swift tax. DeAndre Swift, not a guy that we're all that concerned about from a pure actual consequential perspective moving forward. Like, sure, is he going to have his games? He's going to have his workload in the intermediate? Yes. But is he a guy that you're really going to trust in your lineup come the consequential weeks? No. So if that's the case, you can use that type of piece to go and get a Ja'Marr Chase who can give you, like you said, maybe not the wide receiver 1 overall upside that he would have had with Joe Burrow, but he's very easily still a top 6 wide receiver in fantasy, like you said.
Yeah, and he's a good buy for both kinds of situations right now. If you're 1-2 or 0-3, I think he's a good buy. If you're 2-1 or 3-0, he's a good buy.
Yeah, absolutely. Ja'Marr Chase, he was the fantasy 101 coming into the season. Still a good buy because that's not where he's being priced now. TreVeyon Henderson is my first buy, and technically speaking, we did talk about him last week, but we did have a big nugget happen in week 3, and I'll talk about the let's just say lack of ball security from the other members of this backfield in a second. But with TreVeyon Henderson, he saw his season best at snaps in week 3, played 63% of the 2-minute drills. And I think this could potentially be the changing of the guard in the New England backfield. With TreVeyon Henderson, he still has that elite upside that we loved coming into this year. The only question mark that we've had is when is the touch rise going to happen? However, Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson, they both fumbled in week 3's game, and it could be the last time that you can buy TreVeyon Henderson, because after that, like you see this tweet from Jacob Gibbs, 87% snap rate for TreVeyon Henderson. And on top of that, we see the receiving usage when he's on the field. He's not running a ton of routes yet, only a 37% route share, but when he is running routes, when he is on the field being used in the pass game, 23% targets per route run. How New England literally treated those other two running backs last year. I think it's sooner rather than later that TreVeyon Henderson completely takes over this backfield.
Yeah, and with a guy like Henderson, a guy like Harvey, any like rookie running back, your buying window is open until it's not. So go try and buy Amari in Hampton right now, if you don't believe me, because his buying window was open the first 2 weeks of the season. It is now slam shut. For myself, for example, who has Amari in Hampton in my home league, I've gotten offers for him this week, and people are still thinking that I think he's like the week 1 to 2 price. And I'm like, brother, you don't know what you're talking about at this point in time. So you got to get ahead of TreVeyon Henderson before this happens. And like you said, we saw like a sprinkle of it happening already with the fumbles, with the fact that after the fumbles, he was taking a bigger share of the workload. And even going back to a few weeks ago, they said he was going to be the starting running back, like the beat reporters of the Patriots, and it hasn't materialized yet.
Yeah, so it just feels like sooner rather than later. I mean, the meme that I always think of in regards to rookies before and after the breakout. Before the breakout, it's like the meme, cost of the brick has gone up. The price of the brick has gone up the minute that these guys show signs of life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I definitely am. I think it was good to bring that guy up again because he is a better buy now than he was last week. Even I'd be willing to pay him more now than I was last week because there's a lot more unknown last week. And Drake London, we've talked about in numerous occasions too. He also probably worth mentioning here as a guy that has been a buy for a couple of weeks now that we could have easily brought up again. But again, I'm staying in the first round, man. I'm going Justin Jefferson. I'm buying low on him too, because the reason I think starting slow was probably to be expected for JJ is that he has a young quarterback who's now injured, and we have Carson Wentz playing quarterback right now. They ran very few offensive plays against Cincinnati. You think about the fact that they scored 2 defensive touchdowns. It was a blowout win, all that kind of stuff. I view him as still 90% of what I thought of him coming into the season. I know that he is probably not quite to the level of the 20 to 24 point per game upside that we probably expected if you drafted Justin Jefferson in the top 6. He's currently wide receiver 25 in PPR points per game. The guy who drafted Justin Jefferson is probably 1-2 or 0-3. There's a very good chance that he's panicking. Wentz can get him the ball. He's a veteran quarterback. I'm not really worried about it. Hopefully when JJ McCarthy comes back, which could be week 4, week 5, week 6, week 7, we have no idea. He should be playing better because he's at least gotten his feet wet in the NFL. The only rationale that I need for this take is that he's Justin freaking Jefferson. I don't care how he's performed so far. He's averaged 18 fantasy points per game over his career in the NFL. And Addison's back to take attention away. Hawkinson started playing better in week 3. The run game looked a lot improved with Jordan Mason running the ball really well. And the Vikings have the 5th easiest remaining strength of schedule in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. So for me, I don't care that Justin Jefferson's not playing well. I don't care that the quarterbacks don't look that great. I expect the offense to start playing better once either the quarterbacks get more chemistry with Jefferson, whether it's McCarthy or Wentz, or just things change because he's Justin Jefferson. Garrett Wilson, Chase Brown, if you can take that and go trade up for Justin Jefferson, go do it. Ashton Genty and DK Metcalf for Jefferson and Mooney, go do it. Tedero, McMillan, and St. Brown. This one's a little closer, but Kamara and Jefferson, if you needed a running back, I think that makes sense. I'm trading for Justin Jefferson because I feel like you are not going to feel bad about trading for Justin Jefferson ever.
Yeah, and I think the sentiment on Justin Jefferson is lower because of the comparative wide receivers that went around him. Like when you compare him to Puka Nacua, to Amon St. Brown, to Malik Neighbors, like it's very clear that those guys went directly after him and have outproduced him. So I think that kind of leaves, whoever drafted Justin Jefferson a sour taste in their mouth. Damn, I could have had Puka. Damn, I could have had Amon-Ra. Damn, I could have had Malik Neighbors. Gibbs as well. Obviously, if you took Justin Jefferson over Gibbs, you're probably not feeling great as well. I mean, there are guys in that range directly after Jefferson that is leaving the Jefferson owner dissatisfied. And I still view him as a top 5, top 8 level wide receiver this season. Sure. Do I think he's going to reach the 20 points per game? Probably not. But you have a locked in 17 plus point per game. And who knows? Maybe we have another down year at wide receiver after Puka Nacua, and he could be the wide receiver 2 in fantasy on 18.2 points a game like he did last year.
Yeah, no, he definitely could. He definitely could. So I just feel comfortable. It makes me sleep nice at night buying Justin Jefferson. You know what I mean? So taking some of these overperforming wide receivers and running backs who are like wide receiver 2s and 3s or running back 2s and 3s that are just producing like RB1s right now, like David Montgomery and J.K. Dobbins are both RB1s in fantasy. Quentin Johnston and Keenan Allen are both wide receiver 1s in fantasy right now. Like, you can take guys like this and package them with a guy who was drafted highly and go and get Justin Jefferson as a result. A good example of that is the Garrett Wilson Chase Brown trade that you see there, the Garrett Wilson Kyron Williams trade that you see there. So definitely go out and buy these elite guys. I think this is going to be one of the most consequential trade target weeks of the season. Like last year was week 5, week 6. We were talking about buying Bijan and a couple other guys. I think this one might end up being very consequential to fantasy championships 10 weeks from now.
Yeah, and a guy that wasn't drafted in the Jamar Chase, the Justin Jefferson range, but you can argue that when he is fully on the field, when he's operating in the role of his offense, he provides similar utility in your lineup. Rashee Rice, wide receiver of the Kansas City Chiefs, this is a high-end wide receiver 1 that fell to the 4th round, the 5th round, maybe even the 6th round of your drafts, that has the suspension time cut in half now. We are 3 weeks into the season, only 3 more weeks that we will be without Rashee Rice. It is the time to buy Rashee Rice, especially if you're 3-0, especially if you're 2-1 with top 4 level points scored in your league. This is the type of buy that you're going to look back on yourself in week 7 and week 8 and thank yourself for going and getting Rashee Rice. We know what he offers, man. He's a clear alpha number 1 wide receiver when he's on the field, and he's fully healthy. It's not like he's missed this time with the knee injury he suffered last year. No. He got fully cleared. He's fully healthy right now. The only thing we are concerned about is the suspension. And as of right now, I value him as a top 14, top 15 wide receiver rest of the season. But I don't think the market has quite caught up because we saw what Rice could do on the field in the tail end of his rookie season. This is a damn good player in an offense that needs wide receiver help dire.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes in the Chiefs offense looks like it's missing Rashee Rice badly right now. Like you said, he was the guy that was moving the chains. He was the guy that was keeping drives going. The Chiefs right now have scored 21, 17, 22 points in their first couple games. And it honestly has felt worse than that. Like it feels like they've scored even less points per game. They scored 22 or more points in every game that Rashee Rice played the first 3 weeks of 2024. And they were 26-27 in 2 of those games. So I do think that Worthy, in addition to Rice coming back over the next few weeks, is going to make this offense look a lot better. And like you said, Rashee Rice, when he was on the field in 2024, first 3 games of the season, at the end of his rookie season and into that playoff run, he was 3rd in Rice. He was 8, 9, 10 target per game receiver because they just kept throwing him over the middle targets. And especially once Worthy's back on the field, assuming he's healthy, the way that he stretches the field and clears out for a guy like Rice is going to be a huge schematic advantage. I feel like I've been talking about this for the Chiefs offense for 2.5 years of how much of a schematic advantage they're going to have when all their players are healthy, but none of their players have been healthy at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, adding to that, you remember what my nickname was for Rashee Rice last year. Rashee St. Rice is what I was calling him because that was the role he was operating in this Chiefs offense. And I understand small sample size, but 99th percentile against zone coverage according to reception perception. When he is healthy, when he's operating, he is a zone beater, and he's exactly what Patrick Mahomes needs across the middle of the field.
Yeah, no, and it's worth noting that he can't play a game until week 7. And
Correct.
The Chiefs, I believe, what is it, a week 9 bye that they have or something like that? So you need to be at least 2-1, if not 3-0, to even consider probably trading for Rashee Rice. And the Rashee Rice manager probably drafted them knowing that they were going to need to be good at the beginning of the season. And if they're 2-1, if they're 3-0, they're probably not going to trade Rashee Rice. But if they're 0-3 or they're 1-2, they might have to rethink that stance and think, hey, I need to trade Rashee Rice for J.K. Dobbins, like this trade that you can see here. I would imagine that's a trade that could go down in your league if the Rashee Rice manager is 0-3 right now. Ladd McConkey and Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall is probably going to be really good for the next couple of weeks while Kittle is still out, while Ayuk is still out. That's a trade that could maybe make some sense. So if you have a guy that's a wide receiver 2 or 3 or a running back 2 that is producing at a high level, overproducing maybe where they should be, David Montgomery, those type of guys, use them to go get Rashee Rice, because the Rashee Rice manager might be in a hole right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Rashee Rice. The moment he touches the football field, you're talking about at least a wide receiver 1 in terms of trade value. And possibly if he shows what he did at the start of last year, you could be looking at a mid-end wide receiver 1. You mentioned Jamar Chase. You mentioned Justin Jefferson. I still think there's a possibility that when Rice comes back, he can outproduce even both of them.
It's possible, yeah. Assuming Mahomes plays well and the offense goes back to what it looked like those first 3 games of 2024, I think it's definitely possible, especially if Worthy's there to stretch the field. My last guy, again, also drafted in the first round of fantasy drafts, was probably, I would imagine, at least a top 3 pick in most people's home leagues, Saquon Barkley. The Philadelphia Eagles, as we know, have been extremely run heavy. I don't think that we expect that to change anytime soon. The reason that Barkley is a buy for me is because he's coming off of two of the most difficult matchups that he can go against: the Rams, and elite fantasy running back defense through 3 games, and the Chiefs, number 1 run defense in the NFL in 2024, been really dominant against the run this season. So for me, this is a 90 cents on the dollar buy. You're not going to get Saquon Barkley for nothing. You're still going to have to pay a shit ton for him, but he hasn't ripped off a long run yet. He hasn't had a 30 bomb yet. He hasn't had one of those games that make you think, oh yeah, this was the dude that was the RB1 in fantasy last year. So for me, with Saquon Barkley, I'm looking at opportunities where the schedule is about to clear up. The Bucs, the Broncos, and the Giants, the next 3 weeks, that's the second easiest stretch of running back matchups for Saquon Barkley. That 30 burger, that 40 burger is coming. It's just get ahead of the curve. Try and get Saquon Barkley while people are viewing him probably more as a mid RB1, I would imagine, as opposed to a high-end RB1. And I still view him, in the same vicinity as Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, those type of guys. So if you can get Saquon Barkley, again, for 2 guys that are overperforming, let's say you can take Emeka Egbuka and J.K. Dobbins and go get Saquon Barkley. Let's say you can take Chuba Hubbard plus Quentin Johnston and go get Saquon Barkley. Derrick Henry, who's a little bit behind Saquon Barkley, plus a bench piece like a Travis Hunter, maybe somebody a little bit lower upside, that would make some sense. Tony Pollard, Ricky Pearsall, I doubt you're going to get Saquon for that, but this is a real trade that happened in a league. So it's possible that people are panicking a little bit on Saquon, and it is also possible, too, that the person who drafted him is 0-3 or 1-2.
Yeah, so I have Saquon as my RB5 rest of the season. I do agree that he needs to be in the top tier, but I do think at this point, given the point per game that McCaffrey's showing you, given, of course, the youth factor of Gibbs and Bijan, given just how dominant Jonathan Taylor's been, I do think at this point he has to be the clear 5 of that group, in my opinion. But at the same time, we know what he's capable of. The guy is playing behind the best offensive line in the league. The guy is playing behind a team that's probably going to win 14 games. The guy's not going to get sniped on the 1-yard line every single week. You're going to see the 20-yarders, the 30-yarders, the big plays happen. And he's not going to play the Chiefs. He's not going to play the Rams every single week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Saquon, go buy him if you can. Again, it might cost you a lot, but I'm still willing to do it. I still view him as, if we redrafted today, a top 7, top 8 overall pick. Like, he hasn't moved much down from where I expected him to be. And I can even make the argument that after one big game, he'd be right up to a top 3 to 4 to 5 overall redraft pick if we went today. Danny, the first quarterback that we've talked about all year, I believe, in this video. I think I briefly mentioned Jalen Hurts a couple of weeks ago, but for the most part, we have steered clear of quarterbacks and even tight ends to some degree on this video. But you have Jayden Daniels as a buy at this moment.
Yeah, and it's a very similar case to what you said with Jalen Hurts, but ultimately here, 72 pass attempts, 18 rush attempts in those first 2 games that Jayden Daniels played. Obviously, we know what happened. They played the Giants, they played the Packers. I would say 2 of the better defenses, given what we saw with the Giants going up against the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. They looked good in that game. And obviously what they were able to do in week 1, holding Washington to 22 points. And then Green Bay on the other side, since they got Michael Parsons. Is that the best defense in the NFL?
I mean, it was for sure coming into the Browns beating them. But I'd still say it's a top 5 defense for sure.
But that was more the offense's fault. Wasn't it like a 13-10 game?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, regardless, though, when it comes to Jayden Daniels, he was treated like an elite quarterback coming into the year. He had, roughly 20 points in his first 2 games and had a knee sprain. And now people are suddenly treating him like any streaming quarterback. No. Like I said, Commanders, they play 2 tough defenses in the first 2 weeks. And this offense still clearly directly flows through Jayden Daniels. He's a clear top 4 quarterback for me rest of the season. And right now, he's the only one of the, the Lamar Jackson, the Josh Allen, the Jalen Hurts, that range, the elite quarterbacks coming into the year that I think is actually attainable for less than that market value. As long as he's healthy, he should hit that top 5 level quarterback qualifier. But why can't he get back to league winner status, man? We talked about value over replacement player all offseason. We talked about it specifically in the Superflex video. Hitting on these quarterbacks that can give you that elite 22 plus point production is unmatched. I mean, we see it, the league winner chart versus when you go down to even the mid quarterback ones. The difference between a league winner, a top 5 quarterback versus mid quarterback ones is a bigger difference than when we look at, between the back and quarterback ones, quarterback twos, because it starts to get linear once you hit that range. If you can hit a guy that can legitimately make that difference in your lineup, he is extremely valuable. And I think people forget just what Jayden Daniels is capable of. A guy that has more weapons than he had last year, and he averaged 32 points per game down the stretch when Washington needed to make the playoffs. To me, he is still that advantage quarterback. When he is healthy, he is this Washington offense. But like I said, the sentiment around him has somehow changed despite only being 3 weeks into the season. Like, he's expendable for me in the flock league now because I have Caleb Williams, who's now a top 6 quarterback rest of the season, and I can't get a single bite, man. People are treating this guy like a streaming quarterback. If that is how your league is treating Jayden Daniels, definitely go and try to buy him. We see some of these deals right now. I like Ladd McConkey a ton. If you can get Jayden Daniels plus Ricky Pearsall for Ladd McConkey, you do that every single time, in my opinion. Jayden Daniels for Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy is currently banged up right now. I understand Jayden Daniels is as well, but at the same time, a 23-plus point per game quarterback is going to do more in your lineup than a 15 point per game wide receiver. We look at some of these other deals. Etienne for Pickens for Jayden Daniels and Cup, I wouldn't do because I don't like Cup, but you see the overall sentiment here. Jayden Daniels and Marvin Harrison for Cam Scatterbo and Rashad Bateman. Like, I don't know why people are forgetting exactly what Jayden Daniels is.
So I'll give you a little pushback on Jayden Daniels because it's not that I don't think he's a good buy if the market's super down on him the way that the flock league market is. If I didn't have Lamar Jackson, I would be absolutely willing to trade for Jayden Daniels in the flock league. But he has a 10% lower completion percentage through 2 games. His yards per attempt is down 1.4 down to 6.0 yards per attempt. And his rushing production, I mean, his rushing tendency is still there, obviously, but his rushing production hasn't scored a rushing touchdown, 10 and a half, I think, or 11 yards per game less as a runner. So I just think he needs to play a little bit better once he's back on the field. So that's part of it, because I think part of the thesis of buying Jayden Daniels at the 3-4 turn where you took him was that he was going to ascend to one of those alien Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson type of quarterbacks. And in my opinion, he still kind of looks like he did as a rookie. And like you said, he was producing at a super high level down the stretch last year. I just do think that he's probably more into the mid quarterback 1 territory for me, with the way that Caleb has kind of taken a step forward, with the way that Jalen Hurts is still doing Jalen Hurts things, with the way that Herbert is playing right now. I think I can't say confidently that Jayden Daniels is like well ahead of those guys. I think he's actually closer to the end of that territory.
For sure. And I don't disagree. Like, Allen and Lamar should be in their own tier. Like, I'm not arguing that.
I'm not even talking about those guys. Those guys are different.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not even arguing that. I'm more so saying, like, I agree with that overall. But like Jalen Hurts, like, these elite quarterbacks are going to have variance. And on top of that, we literally saw this from Jayden Daniels in the first half of his rookie season. And we saw the level that he could get to. And I don't take much stock in the first 2 games. Like I said, I thought he had, more difficult matchups overall. Sure, Dak, the Cowboys, they absolutely exploited the Giants defense, but 2 out of 3 weeks, the Giants defense has actually held the Chiefs and the Commanders in check.
Yeah, I don't know. I wanted to see him look like he took a step forward. And
I agree.
Would say watching the games, he hasn't looked like he took a step forward yet. And if anything, it looks like he regressed a little bit.
I agree. I'm just saying, contextually speaking, he played 2 tougher matchups, and I do want to see what it looks like when he's playing. I mean, if we go to his schedule right now, like, he's going to play Chicago coming up. He's going to play the Cowboys coming up. He's going to play Miami coming up. Like, there's just so many good spots for the game environment for Jayden Daniels to have that 40 bomb, because inevitably it's going to happen. He's going to have the game where he passed the ball for 250 yards and a touchdown. He rushes the ball 110 yards and 2 touchdowns, and people are going to be wondering why they let go of Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, so if you're starting Dak or Bo Nix or a streaming quarterback of some kind, you should definitely inquire about Jayden Daniels. But if you got Hurts or Lamar or Allen, even if I had like Herbert or Caleb Williams, I probably wouldn't be overly interested in upgrading to Jayden Daniels. I think he's probably within that tier for me.
This buy was more just observational for me because, again, I do have one of those other quarterbacks. I do have a Caleb Williams. I have him, like you said, top 6 level guy. And I just realized, I'm like, holy shit, like, people really have no interest in a guy that can actually be a league winner.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So moving into some of the sells that we have, and again, there's plenty of dudes we could talk about. We've talked about some of these sells already. I have David Montgomery and J.K. Dobbins as 2 of the sells that I'm kind of going after. Any running back 3 types who run hot on touchdowns are always going to be good options to try and tier up from, because David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins, while I feel decent about both of them going forward, I'm like, hey, these guys are usable options for you. You can use them in your flex. They're producing like RB1s in fantasy right now. Yeah. David Montgomery just had a 2 touchdown game, and some people are selling him for Ashton Genty plus. Some people are selling him for Ladd McConkey. Some people are selling Dobbins for Rashee Rice, which, again, if the Rashee Rice drafters 0-3, makes total sense for both sides. J.K. Dobbins plus for Derrick Henry. These 2 guys are good options, but let's not get it twisted here. At best, they're low-end RB2s. And I'm absolutely taking the value whenever I can on these 2 guys if I can tier up.
Well, I mean, David Montgomery just had 31 of his seasonal 50 points in that one game. So I do agree. If you could sell high, I mean, the example that I have is I actually did sell him in our listener redraft league. If you remember on Monday Night Football, I end up going making this. I'm a 2-1 team, top 4 in the league, top 4 in points scored. And I do have a guy like Rashee Rice. So I do trust come week 7, come week 8, my team's going to be a real dominant force. So I position myself to be able to capitalize on that. I traded away Cooper Kupp, David Montgomery, Drake London, and the rest of my fab budget, which I had 36 bucks over the 100%, so $136. I go and get CeeDee Lamb and Kenneth Walker. In that deal, Drake London versus CD, I understand if you are a 1-2 team, that's about even value here. But to me, I was perfectly willing to pay Montgomery Kupp in 136 to go and get Kenneth Walker. I view a big stark tier difference between David Montgomery and a guy like Kenneth Walker, and maybe the market doesn't yet.
Yeah, no, there's a good chance they probably don't because they produced pretty similarly throughout the first 2 weeks of the season. But as we know, kind of Montgomery's role is more just, hey, whenever there's leftover from Jahmyr Gibbs, he's going to get his. And there has been a marginal difference between what Montgomery's role was last year and what it has been this year. So that's another part of why I'm trading him. And then Dobbins, is, as much as I think he can hold on to this job for a good period of time, RJ Harvey is still kind of lurking around there. And I think eventually that backfield's going to go to at least a 50-50 split, even if Dobbins holds him off to the point that Harvey never takes it over. Dobbins is also the type of guy who hasn't been able to stay healthy in his career as well. So if he's producing at a high level and looking as good as he looks, you probably should cash out on him.
Yep. No, I agree. I'm going to go to my sell here. And it's funny because we talked about him as a buy 2 weeks ago, but that's why we are the fantasy stock exchange. You buy when stocks are low, you sell them when they're high. Travis Etienne to me is the perfect timing for a sell high because people still see the production, but we look into the deeper meaning. And the deeper meaning here is he saw his snap share drop to 54% and Baishal Tuden scored for the second straight week. Etienne, he also scored in this game. He had a good fantasy day, but he hasn't seen a 20-plus opportunity game yet, and he is currently the RB9 in fantasy football. Look, I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion. Tuden's going to usurp him, but that has to be considered a factor. Tuden, he's looked good. He isn't making the mistakes that you expect from a day 3 rookie, and we know that the GM had a vision for Tuden coming into the year. I think at very worst, this is going to be some type of committee. Sure, Etienne, he is still the lead back. I'm not arguing that. But he's the RB9 in fantasy, and to me, he's more of a mid-range type of RB2 with his current workload. If you can use him to up tier, like again, people will see RB9. People will see the way Travis Etienne looks, the narrative that goes around Travis Etienne right now. Can you use him and buy low on a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson, like you cited earlier?
Yeah, I don't think he's a sell personally, but I don't think he's a buy either. That's kind of where I'm at with him. I think he's about appropriately priced. Me and you have gone back and forth on what we think of Tuden and is he going to be, a guy that overtakes this backfield? I think it would take an ETN injury for this to become anything more than a 65-40 split kind of thing.
It hasn't been a 65-40 split. He played 54% of the snaps.
Well, he has 61% of the snaps on the season and 60% of the carries. So it has been a 60-40 split so far.
Correct. Overall, I'm saying that that's trending away from that.
Well, he had 71% of the carries this week. So
correct. I'm saying more so the snaps too, because Keenan Allen's also playing. I'm not just saying Tuden. I'm just saying overall, there's more threats to his backfield than I think maybe the market's anticipating right now.
Yeah, I guess. I guess I'm just on the side of I think he's appropriately priced. I don't think I would be, if you can, I agree in premise that if you can tier up from him, by all means, go ahead and do that. But I wouldn't sell him for mid RB2 price tags. I think he's a high end RB2 for me right now.
Well, that's why I value him as a mid running back too. That's where I have him. But I do think the market's valuing him right now because he's the RB9 in fantasy higher than that.
Maybe. Yeah. If someone's going to value him as an RB1, I think you can definitely, you can definitely cash in on that. If you can buy low on, Bucky Irving or something, then definitely go ahead and do that with Travis Etienne. I just think that generally him, Walker, Brees, those guys are probably similarly valued in most people's leagues. So that's kind of where he belongs in terms of his value for my money.
Yeah. And I guess that's where I disagree. I have him a tier below those guys.
But like we said, this is why we're the exchange.
Amen,
if the market value is what I believe, then maybe you guys don't want to sell Etienne. If the market value is what Danny believes, maybe you do want to sell Etienne. So the last guy we got to talk about, I think we've talked about him in 3 straight weeks now, is Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, listen, he's been a 3 wide receiver set merchant and that's worked out because the Chargers had 3 straight divisional games at the beginning of the year. They were all close games. The Chargers have led a lot of the time, or about half the time this season. And when they're leading, Keenan Allen is playing just 55% of the snaps, and 3 of the next 6 opponents for the Los Angeles Chargers are winless football teams, the Miami Dolphins being one of them, and then also, I can't remember who the other 2 are, but they're winless teams. They're bad teams. And then 2 of the other 3 opponents are potentially a Jayden Daniels-less Commanders offense and a Minnesota Vikings offense with Carson Wentz as the quarterback. So I think there's going to be a lot of positive game scripts coming for Amari Hampton and for the run game here. He's run hot on touchdowns as well, Keenan Allen. We've seen him score, I believe, in every single game. And at 33 years old, this is my major concern with Keenan Allen, like in a vacuum. What did I say every single week? Keenan Allen in September is going to be better than Keenan Allen in December, because the second he suffers a soft tissue injury, the second he lands on his ankle weird or something like that, getting tackled, that's when his production is going to start to decline because his efficiency is going to decline. When you're 33, 34 years old, you don't have the same ability to recover from nagging injuries and, brutes of a season as a 23, 24-year-old wide receiver. So while Keenan Allen's price is really high because he's like literally a top 10 fantasy receiver, use him to tier up. Like the perfect example is this first trade. I talked about Jamar Chase as a buy at the beginning of the video. Garrett Wilson, who's producing top 10 receiver as well. Both of these two guys, package them for Jamar Chase. Keenan Allen, if you're a 3-0 team looking for a tight end upgrade, going to get George Kittle. That makes total sense. Keenan Allen and Patrick Mahomes for Jalen Hurts. If you want to get a lockdown stud quarterback, that makes sense. Brian Thomas and Keenan Allen packaged together for Nico Collins. I think that makes sense as well. So for me, he's the perfect guy to throw into a package. Use him to tier up because you probably didn't pay much for him. You either got him on the waiver wire or you drafted him super late.
Yeah, and I think part of it too, Herbert threw the ball 47 times. And don't get me wrong, again, Keenan Allen showed that he can earn targets on this team. He has, a mid-20s target share on the year. But we do see a little bit more ancillary factors in this game. Amari Hampton commanding 7 targets out of the backfield. Maybe Rondé Gatson starts to be used in the tight end rotation, 7 targets on 26 snaps. Like there's a 26 snaps, 26% of the snaps. Like there's a very real possibility that it gets a little bit murkier. And I mean, there's also the more realistic possibility that Ladd McConkey just starts dominating more targets.
Yeah, and I guess it goes without saying that Ladd is still a good buy right now. I just call me crazy. I think that Ladd is eventually, by the time we look at the end of the season, going to lead this team in receiving and all that kind of stuff. And it's not that Quentin Johnson isn't taking a huge step forward. He absolutely is. It's not that Keenan Allen isn't playing well. He absolutely is. I don't buy that this exact usage, this exact dynamic of the Chargers receiver core is going to be the same a month from now. Yeah. I think that eventually we're going to just see these guys ping pong weeks. Keenan Allen, attrition of the season is going to take over and he's going to get less and less efficient, less and less productive as the season goes along. If you have Keenan Allen, this is when you cash out. It's week 3. He's healthy. There's no issues with him. This is when you cash out.
Hey, and we all know at this point in his career, a strain is calling out to his hamstring like the Green Goblin mask.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you guys that have Keenan Allen, hopefully you can make a move and, potentially move him off your roster. But yeah, definitely worth shopping at the very least. If people are not that excited about him, then by all means keep him. But I think he's absolutely worth shopping, as are most of the guys in this video that we talked about, because this is a very, very good week to go out and make some trades because there's some studs available for cheaper prices. There's some guys, like you mentioned, TreVeyon Henderson, who haven't really seen the production yet, but are seeing the usage. So usage and, stud factor related buys are usually always good options for us. If you guys did enjoy this video, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel. If you are new around here, only about 42% of you guys are subscribed to the channel who watch these videos. So we really appreciate. Bump those puppies up, at least get it to 50-50 for us. It's totally free. And we're here to help you win your championships with a lot of free content. If you guys do want bonus content, our rankings, rest of season, weekly start sit, our start sit manifesto to help you make decisions every single week, and our dynasty rankings and dynasty trade value chart, which are undergoing a major update this week, are all available on flockfantasy.com. That is linked down below in the pinned comment. Right now, you can sign up for an annual Mother Flocker package, be covered from now until the end of September next year. So you'd be covered through the rest of this season, into the dynasty season, into the rookie season, and then into your redraft preparation next year. And you get a free team review on top of that. And we do those team reviews on live streams every week. So that interests you, that'll be linked down below in the pinned comment. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.